A rectangle is 6 feet long and has a perimeter of 20 feet. What is the width of this rectangle? Explain how you solve the problem. If I try to go on to the next without answering it, it keys me in that I must answer all the questions on the page before moving on. So I'll put down an answer. And move on. I have to do it differently. 10. Oops. See if that takes it. Yes. Now this is an interactive question. We have swimmers in a pool, and they're moving. They're swimming to the end. 5 swimmers compete in the 50-meter race. The finish time for each swimmer is shown in the video. Explain how the results of the race would change if the race used a clock that rounded to the nearest tenth. The 2-eyed space creatures, 3-eyed space creatures, and 4-eyed space creatures are having a contest to create a group with 24 total eyes. Question 9. How many 2-eyed space creatures are needed to make a group of 24? Question 10. How many 3-eyed space creatures are needed to make a group of 24 total eyes? And how many 4-eyed space creatures are needed to make a group with 24 total eyes? Somebody told the 5-eyed space creatures that they could not join the contest. Explain why 5-eyed space creatures cannot make a group with 24. Invisible. Oops. 5. A number line is shown. What is a possible value of A? Again, they have to manipulate a keyboard, electronic keyboard. Use an add arrow to draw a line of symmetry for the leaf. And just to go back now and share quickly with you some of the items for the English language arts portion of the test. So for English language arts, students will be receiving some text. They need to use the arrows to be able to expand the text so they can read, and use the arrows to decrease the text so they can answer the question types. Some of the questions are open-ended response. Some of the questions ask students to click on 2 phrases from the paragraph. To be able to answer, to read the part of the text again, to select 3 sentences that show the character did something. Again, they need to click and highlight. So those are some of the examples from the English language arts portion. There's definitely more navigation required for the math portions of the test. And again, the samples that I showed you were from grade 3. They go all the way up from 3 through 8 and into grade 11 as well. So now I'll turn it back to Kevin, who will talk about some of our implications for technology.
Thank you. So we are testing third grade up, and so we then start thinking about how many tests can we actually administer. And so I have put together a graphic here. I'm sorry for the smallness of the font. Basically, we're sequestering kids in the library areas, or in the case of Maple Street, we're actually in a computer lab. And we have 24 computers in most schools, 25 I believe in the high school, that we can bring to bear. So if you look at the next line over it, test starts. And so this means how many times do we have to actually start up a test. And so, for instance, at the high school, there would be, with our population, we'd have to start up 904 tests. So if we're running 2 tests per day, it's going to take us 19 days of testing. And so now we're very quickly starting to see how some of our computer resources are not quite up to speed. If you take a look at our Center Middle School, this is probably the one that's the most shocking. 3,092 tests at 2 test cycles a day. We will be able to do 65 days in order to take that test. So obviously that is getting into an area where it's not very practical. So we have to start looking at some other resources that are going to be available so that we can test the kids at a faster rate, so that it is as small of an impact on the curriculum day as possible. Talking a little bit about some of the computer skills that we need, remembering that this is a third grade test, starting at third grade. Some basic typing skills, if we could go on to the next slide, thank you. Some basic typing skills, basic mouse skills, keyboard navigation skills, and some non-conventional environment manipulation. At this point, the kids' exposure to computers by grade 3 is, I would classify as minimal. And so we really need to do a lot more in terms of early education with basic computer skills, so that the kids will be ready to take these tests. And so that includes basic typing skills, getting them familiar with home row, and not having to hunt around for letters, knowing instinctively where those letters are. And one of the aha moments for us was, the test is more than just typing. This is basic mouse skills, learning how to manipulate a mouse, left clicks, right clicks, those types of things. And then the other aha moment was some basic keyboard navigation, so hitting the control key and another key at the same time in order to do certain functions. These are things that are not currently heavily embedded in our curriculum, and so we're needing to look at that. And then, of course, some of the non-conventional environment manipulation. What you just saw was expanding a window by clicking on an arrow, working a calculator on the online or on the computer itself, dragging and dropping, non-conventional deletes. Normally, when you want to delete something, you select it first and then hit delete. And this process is the exact opposite. So we're going to need to get our kids familiar with the testing environment. So we wanted to talk a little bit about our readiness efforts, what we're doing to try to meet some of the challenges that are going to be coming up. The first one is designing changes in our curriculum, grades 1 through 3. The 21st Century Learning Team and the Curriculum Leadership Team have had numerous discussions about looking at the technology timeline, starting at kindergarten and going all the way through till a senior. And when do we introduce certain things to students that are currently, and what makes sense in the 21st century? We found very quickly that we needed to make some changes. And so one of the things that we're looking at is integrating basic typing in at grades 1 through 3. In order to do that, we have to place some computers in the classrooms so that the kids can get the experience and get their hands on the computers themselves. And so right now we don't really have 3 to 5 computers in the classroom so that teachers could make use of that resource. So in order to address that, we started looking at what resources do we have. Well, we have a number of older devices. Some of them were donated, and some of them we've had around for years that we could probably recondition to make ready for that type of environment. Basic typing, basic internet access. Mr. Kibbe's class in the high school has graciously helped us with this process, begun this process where we've collected all of the old computers in the high school that we have, and we've taken them down to his area, and the kids are actually going through a diagnostic process to say, yes, this computer is ready to go, we can actually work with this, it's just missing a hard drive. Or no, this computer's too old and really needs to be recycled. So we're really trying to do our best to recycle the equipment that we have and make use of what we got currently. However, that itself just isn't going to cover us. If we're looking to put, say, 4 or 5 computers in grades 1 through 3 so that teachers can begin rotating students through those stations, we'd be looking at over 200 computers. And so we have to make up the gap somewhere else, and so that's where the future purchases come in. One of the things that we have spent a great deal of time doing is trying to figure out how to get the best bang for our dollar. And one of the things that has come to light is the introduction of the Chromebook. And for those of you that don't know what a Chromebook is, it's basically a laptop that costs $250. However, it's a cloud device, so it doesn't have a conventional hard drive in it, and it runs off of a different operating system called Chrome OS, which makes it extremely efficient and easy to maintain. So because of that cost, we're looking at piloting a Chromebook to see how it does in the testing environment. We have been told that it can be used in the tests, which is good news for us, especially given the cost. And then, of course, mixing in some conventional laptops as well. I don't think there's a silver bullet with Chromebooks, but they're going to go a long way for us, for sure. The other piece that we have to do is we have to rethink the testing areas and our network infrastructure. As I said earlier, we're basically putting the kids in the library because we felt that was really the only area that we could place them and not have a massive impact on curriculum in the other classrooms. Many of the teachers have computer labs, but those computers are the heart and soul of their curriculum, so it's not easy for us to think about putting them in those environments. And so if we think about putting kids in a library situation, we're going to need to do a little bit of infrastructure upgrade so that we can plug in 50 or 75 computers so that we can test more kids at once. We're also going to have to be looking at some additional training for IT staff and support staff to administer these tests. And as you've been told, we are going through the process now and learning as we go to try to figure out where we may have some problems so that we can smooth out those bumps in the road so that when the kids are ready to take the test, we're not fumbling over technology. We want the technology to be transparent, and so that means that it needs to work smoothly. The other piece that is really good for us is the utilization of our new network infrastructure. This was extremely good timing to have this new network in place because it really does prepare us for these tests that are coming up. All of these tests are online. And so we really cannot be worried about old switches or old networking aspects to try and be successful with that. And so we were very fortunate to have the infrastructure in place ahead of time. So in terms of many other school districts, we're ahead of the game in terms of what's on the back end that kids don't see. But what we're lagging in at the moment is the stuff that you do see, the computers and the laptops that the kids can actually take these tests on. We don't want them testing on a 12 or 14-year-old computer if we could help it.